G'day, I'm Tim Thompson and I am near Bairnsdale in East Gippsland talking to Matt Stephenson about the amazing job that he's doing with a Landcare Gallagher grant to improve some amazing country on his family's property. Matt, how are you, mate?
Good, Tim, how are you?
Not too bad. Now, you've got a fair history with Landcare, haven't you? But you've also been, thankfully, the recipient for a Landcare Gallagher grant to look after some pretty spectacular and significant country on the old family farm.
That is correct, yes. We got some funding to put in an exclusion fence to exclude livestock and as a consequence of that also exclude deer from this important conservation area.
Now, you had the confidence to take on a whole new type of fencing because of the Landcare grant that was available with Gallagher, and you found that you've been able, with use of smart fencing, to not only exclude your livestock from this area, which was your primary purpose, but also kangaroos, deer, wallaby and other creatures that are going to damage your recently planted trees.
That's correct, yes. We've certainly isolated different animals, pest animals and livestock from this particular area. There is some wallaby action. There's a little bit of wallaby action and a little bit of wombat action within this conservation area.
And you don't want to stop all of that in a conservation area, do you? You want to just regulate movement, don't you?
That's correct. But we also have noticed that there is still a flock of emus that are on this property, and they actually just work their way around the exclusion fence and they're still on the property. They're just not in this particular area at the moment.
That's a fantastic result, isn't it, all round?
Wonderful.
So Matt, you're not just looking after the biodiversity on this property, you are a farmer. This property has been in your family for some time. Can you tell me a little bit about its various uses and its history?
Over the years, this farm has been a dairy farm. So there was a couple of different dairies, which the remnants of are still found in the bush in various places here. There was 2 dairies.
Yep.
It's also had beef cattle, quite large mobs of sheep over the years. I've only got a few dorpers now, just a handful. But yeah, it's mainly been dairy, beef and sheep. And
it's often farmers that have to manage the natural landscape, and it's great to see that you're donating and dedicating some of your property to looking after the natural environment, and you're doing this with really smart fencing.
Look, I guess, you know, from an early age, I was very respectful of conservation areas on farms, and I was always looking to protect those areas. So it was a natural progression for me to move from, you know, buying this property to looking at its natural assets and wanting to protect them in a more enhanced way.
Well, let's have a look at some of these natural assets. You've got a gorge on this property that is pretty amazing. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's a sandstone gorge. It's for those that are familiar with EVCs, it's a dry valley forest EVC. There's lots of really cool plants in there. It's home to an amazing array of birds. Apparently there's platypus and Gippsland water dragon in there, but it's a place of great tranquility as well. So I know a lot of people like to go for a wander through there and just sit and listen to the creek meandering its way through the gorge and have a look at some of the amazing cliff faces.
So this is an area that really has to be looked after. It was coming under a bit of threat, wasn't it? There were some issues in this gorge?
That's right. So, you know, with the exclusion fence, that's really mitigated some of those issues because we did have a lot of livestock and, of course, large deer numbers going through the gorge and along the creek over the years.
And what was some of the damage that you were noticing from this activity?
Probably the 2 most pronounced issues that we had with livestock and deer in those sensitive conservation areas were through soil erosion and also the browsing of native plants that were coming up and either growing or trying to germinate and grow within this area.
And livestock and ferals will nip the top out of those and turn them into multiple trunks and do all sorts of damage to them, won't they? Whereas now you're getting nice, strong, heavy growth up towards the canopy, aren't you?
That's true. They'll eat seedlings. They'll also browse, you know, some shrubs like Pomaderus, for example, all the way from head high all the way down to the stump. So they can cause significant amounts of damage to everything from seedlings to mature trees.
How long has this fence been in place for now?
The fence has been here for about 12 months.
And what have you noticed in terms of rehabilitation or regrowth in the area over that 12 months? Have you noticed a difference yet?
Well, it's been twofold. One thing that I have noticed is that there's a lot of recruitment of native plants here. We're actually looking just over here behind you at some eucalypts that have actually just popped up by themselves. Now they wouldn't be there. Free trees, that's right. And secondly, I've also been able to plant many thousands of trees in this area that I wouldn't have been able to plant if it wasn't for this exclusion fence, because obviously livestock and deer would be predating on them and ripping the guards off and pulling the trees out and so forth.
So where you've excluded the deer and the livestock, the trees are doing really well. They've just got up to that vulnerable stage and we're not seeing any of the tips being taken out yet.
That's correct. And I would expect that, you know, that with the density of plantings that we've got here, the exclusion fence, and also obviously our presence as well, would be a deterrent to any of those browsing animals like deer, kangaroos, wallabies and wombats.
Now, Landcare's done an amazing thing in partnership with Gallagher in making these grants available. They are available every year, aren't they?
I believe so. So with this grant, it's allowed me to actually section off the property into two distinct areas.
Yep.
So it's allowed me to develop a property management plan that's more conducive to this landscape. So I've got the woolshed block, I've got the exclusion fence, then I've got the gorge, then another exclusion fence, and then this other section of the property that we see behind us here. So it's allowed me to move stock around, do rotational grazing, and just manage the property more effectively.
So what I'm hearing is that the Landcare Gallagher grant has not only helped the native environment, but it's also helped your farm management out of sight.
It certainly has.
Matt, it's been wonderful spending some time out with you here today, having a look at not only how you're looking after the natural environment, but how you're managing that alongside your commercially viable property. And thank you very much for not only the work that you're doing on your own property and looking after the native environment, but for your time that you've taken to share it with us all. Thank you very much, mate.
No worries, Tim. Thank you. And thanks to Gallagher and Landcare Australia for this partnership and allowing landholders like me the opportunity to do this great work.
Guys, if you want to find out more about the Gallagher Landcare grants and Landcare in general, just check out the links in the description below. If you like this kind of video, don't forget, hit the little subscribe button, give it a thumbs up. There's plenty more on timthompson.ag, and I'll see someone as equally amazing and inspiring as Matt next week.